At first, nothing looks wrong. The forest still stands shoulder to shoulder, leaves stitched together overhead, humidity pressing down like a held breath. Cicadas buzz, macaws pass overhead in brief flashes of color. Rivers still move, brown and heavy, dragging entire worlds downstream. To an untrained eye, the Amazon without jaguars looks the same as it did yesterday. That illusion is the jaguar's final trick. When it works perfectly, it is almost never seen, and when it vanishes, its absence hides in plain sight. The jaguar is not the loudest predator in the Amazon, nor the fastest, nor the most numerous. Its power is quieter and more precise. It is pressure made flesh. A jaguar does not need to kill often to dominate an ecosystem. It needs only to be possible. Every tapir stepping into a river, every peccary crossing an open bank, every caiman hauling out onto mud carries an invisible calculation shaped by jaguar presence. Where the jaguar hunts is often less important than where it might hunt. This constant background risk sculpts the jungle's daily rhythm, compressing movement into safer windows, pushing prey into suboptimal habitats, and preventing animals from lingering long enough to damage any single place too deeply. When the jaguar disappears, that pressure releases instantly, like a trap springing open. Capybaras are among the first to respond. These large rodents already live on the edge of danger, bound to water for thermoregulation and escape. Under jaguar pressure, they move cautiously, favoring thick cover and limiting daytime exposure. Without it, their posture changes within weeks. Groups grow bolder, venturing farther from forest edges, grazing longer along riverbanks, shifting activity into brighter hours. Peccaries follow a similar pattern. Herds that once traveled in tight, nervous formations loosen, spreading wider through the understory, trampling the same trails repeatedly. What was once cautious transit becomes habitual use. This is not rebellion. It is biology doing exactly what it evolved to do. Prey species are exquisitely tuned to risk. They are not optimized for comfort or harmony, but for survival efficiency. When the apex predator vanishes, the cost-benefit equation flips. Movement increases because the penalty for movement drops. Feeding time extends because vigilance relaxes. Water access becomes crowded because fear no longer enforces spacing. The forest doesn't ask whether this is sustainable, it simply responds. The effects stack quickly. Riverbanks take the first hit. Capybaras graze low and often, stripping grasses and young shoots that stabilize soil. Peccaries root and churn the ground, loosening sediment. Without jaguars to keep these animals moving and dispersed, pressure concentrates. Banks soften. Rainfall, already intense, finds fewer roots to hold the edge. Sediment sloughs into the water column, turning clear shallows opaque. Light penetration drops. Aquatic plants suffer. Fish that rely on visual cues for mating or feeding lose clarity in their environment, and breeding success falls. This isn't an abstract cascade, it is a mechanical one. Jaguar absence changes prey behavior. Prey behavior changes vegetation structure. Vegetation structure controls erosion. Erosion alters water chemistry and light. Water chemistry reshapes fish communities. The jaguar never touches the fish, yet the fish feel its loss all the same. Noise increases too. The forest without jaguars is louder, not quieter. Herds move more frequently, breaking branches, churning leaf litter, vocalizing without the restraint imposed by danger. Insects respond to vegetation stress. Standing water becomes muddier and more stagnant along eroded banks, favoring mosquitoes and parasites. Disease vectors gain ground as clean, flowing edges degrade into warm, nutrient-rich pools. Fear once acted as sanitation. Its removal invites decay. Even trees feel the change. Seedlings that relied on brief windows of relief between grazing pulses are consumed before establishing. Certain plant species that evolved alongside jaguar-mediated movement patterns begin to vanish from heavily trafficked corridors. Others, less palatable or more resilient, spread aggressively, simplifying the forest structure. Diversity declines not because life disappears, but because dominance concentrates. Humans notice the effects differently, and usually too late. Crop raiding intensifies along forest edges. As prey populations grow and confidence rises, animals push into agricultural zones with unprecedented boldness. Fields near rivers suffer first. What once happened at night now happens in daylight. Farmers respond predictably. Fencing, chasing, killing. Conflict escalates. The jaguar, once blamed for livestock losses, is now gone. Yet losses increase anyway. Shifted from cattle to crops, from rare attacks to constant attrition. This irony is the jaguar's final lesson. It is easy to frame apex predators as sources of chaos because their violence is visible and emotionally charged. But their true role is restraint. Jaguars specialize in killing efficiently, often targeting the most vulnerable individuals, injured, old, careless. Their bite is uniquely adapted for this role. Unlike most big cats, jaguars routinely pierce skulls, delivering rapid neurological shutdown. This efficiency minimizes prolonged chases and excessive disturbance. A jaguar kill is sudden, localized, and over quickly. Its ecological footprint is smaller than the cumulative damage caused by unchecked prey populations. Without that selective pressure, weakness spreads instead of being removed. Overcrowding increases stress and disease transmission among prey species. Parasites flourish. Injuries go untreated. Population booms collapse into crashes, destabilizing food webs in cycles far more violent than predation ever was. The jungle does not become safer. It becomes erratic. There is also a subtler loss, harder to measure, but no less real. Jaguars influence how animals perceive space. Their presence creates landscapes of fear, invisible maps etched into behavior. Certain trails are avoided. Certain clearings remain empty except at specific times. These spatial patterns allow recovery zones to exist without fences or rules. When the jaguar disappears, these mental boundaries dissolve. The forest loses its internal zoning system. Everything presses everywhere, all the time. From a biological standpoint, the jaguar is not merely a predator, it is a regulator of attention. It forces constant environmental awareness. Animals under jaguar pressure thermoregulate differently, choosing shaded paths even when heat tolerance would allow otherwise. They adjust hydration strategies, drink faster, in riskier postures, then retreat. They synchronize movement with group vigilance, altering social structures. Remove the jaguar, and these finely tuned behaviors unravel. The result is not freedom, it is inefficiency. By the time humans recognize the full cost, the jaguar's absence has already rewritten the system. Reintroduction becomes difficult. Prey species no longer remember how to fear properly. Habitats are degraded. Conflict zones harden into permanent front lines. The enforcer is gone, and the jungle, stripped of its quiet authority, stumbles under the weight of its own abundance. This is the truth that hides behind the myth. The jaguar is not important because it is powerful. It is important because it prevents power from accumulating anywhere else. When it vanishes, the Amazon does not breathe easier. It loses its balance, and balance, once broken, is far harder to restore than it ever was to maintain. The forest floor feels calm in a way that should be unsettling. Leaf litter lies undisturbed, layered thick and damp, stitched together by fungal threads and the slow collapse of old seasons. Nothing erupts, nothing flees. No sudden bursts of wings or legs or scales. In a functioning Amazon, this stillness almost never exists. Movement is constant, not because animals are careless, but because something is always forcing them to move. When that force disappears, the quiet is not peace, it is backlog. Army ants are that force. They are not hunters in the way jaguars hunt. They do not stalk, ambush, or select individuals. Their power comes from inevitability. A raid is not a search, it is a sweep. Tens or hundreds of thousands of workers surge forward in a living front, pouring through leaf litter, under logs, up trunks, and into crevices that almost nothing else can penetrate at scale. Anything that cannot outrun, outfly, or outclimb the wave is exposed. Anything that can escape is flushed into the open. The ants themselves consume only a fraction of what they reveal, but the act of revelation is the point. The forest relies on that exposure. This is raid ecology, and without it, the understory begins to hoard life in the worst possible way. Army ants are nomadic by necessity. Their colonies are too large to feed in one place for long, and their larvae demand constant protein input. Instead of building permanent nests, they cycle between stationary bivouac phases and aggressive foraging phases. migrating across the forest in pulses. Each raid is temporary, but together they form a moving pattern of disturbance that touches nearly every square meter of ground over time. No patch remains hidden forever. No refuge stays safe indefinitely. This rotational pressure prevents any single insect population from becoming entrenched. When the ants vanish, that rotation stops. At first, the change is subtle. Spiders remain in their retreats longer. Beetle larvae stay buried deeper in the litter. Small reptiles linger under the same logs day after day. Insects that evolved to respond instantly to ant pheromones, freezing, dropping, or fleeing, no longer receive the signal. Their behavior shifts not because they have become smarter, but because the environmental trigger that once punished delay is gone. Survival strategies loosen. The next effect is visible only if you know where to look. Ant-following birds fail to appear. In a healthy Amazon, a major army ant raid is a mobile feeding event for dozens of species. Birds such as antbirds, wood creepers, and tanagers track the swarm's advance with uncanny precision, reading chemical cues, sound, and even the behavior of other followers. They do not eat the ants. They eat what the ants dislodge: fleeing insects, exposed spiders, panicked lizards, and small mammals forced into the open. Some reptiles do the same, slipping along the edges of the swarm, exploiting chaos without ever engaging the ants directly. Remove the ants, and this entire feeding network collapses. Ant followers do not simply switch prey. Their hunting strategies are built around predictability and flush-driven opportunity. Without raids, they must rely on independent foraging, which is slower, less efficient, and more energetically expensive. Reproductive success drops. Territories shift. Some species abandon areas entirely. The forest loses not just ants, but the predators that evolved alongside them. Meanwhile, the insects that once lived under constant threat begin to accumulate. Leaf litter becomes denser, not just physically, but biologically. Larvae that would normally be flushed and consumed survive to maturity in greater numbers. Egg clusters remain undisturbed. Certain herbivorous insects spike, feeding longer and more intensively on seedlings and decomposing matter. The composition of the litter changes as feeding pressure concentrates instead of disperses. Instead of a constant turnover driven by disturbance, decomposition becomes patchy and uneven. Fungi respond immediately. In areas where insect activity surges, frass and decaying plant matter accumulate faster than microbial communities can process them. Moisture holds longer. Anaerobic pockets form. Rot shifts from thin, distributed decay to thick, localized mats. Some fungal species expand aggressively, while others vanish, unable to compete in the altered chemical environment. This is not just a cosmetic change. Fungi regulate nutrient release. When their balance shifts, soil chemistry follows. The result is a forest floor that looks intact but functions poorly. Army ants act as a sanitation system by breaking accumulation cycles. They do not clean by removing everything, but by preventing anything from hiding indefinitely. Their raids reset the clock on vulnerability. Without that reset, the understory becomes a reservoir of insects, of parasites, of potential outbreaks, waiting for the right conditions to explode. Pests that humans notice are only a fraction of the story. Certain caterpillars and beetles that defoliate young trees thrive in ant-free zones. Their larvae survive in numbers that would be impossible under regular raid pressure. Saplings suffer repeated damage before they can establish. Forest regeneration slows, not uniformly, but in streaks and pockets that mirror the absence of ant movement. Over time, this creates uneven age structures in vegetation, weakening resilience to storms, droughts, and disease. Even thermoregulation patterns shift. Small ectotherms like amphibians and reptiles depend on microhabitat turnover to avoid parasites and overheating. Army ant raids force them to relocate, breaking parasite life cycles and preventing prolonged occupancy of suboptimal shelters. Without displacement, these animals remain longer in warm, damp refuges, ideal conditions for fungal infections and mite infestations. Disease prevalence increases quietly, long before population declines become obvious. The irony is that army ants themselves look expendable. Individually, they are small, blind, and replaceable. Their bites hurt, but they rarely threaten large animals. This makes them easy to underestimate and easier to destroy indirectly through habitat fragmentation, pesticide drift, and climate disruption. Yet what they provide is not strength, but synchronization. They keep time moving on the forest floor. Their absence also reveals how tightly evolution binds systems together. Many insects possess specialized responses to army ant pheromones, behaviors that make no sense in a world without raids. Freeze responses become maladaptive. Drop and hide tactics fail because nothing is chasing. Sensory adaptations lose relevance. Traits that once balanced risk and survival now tilt toward overconfidence. And overconfidence is lethal when the system rebalances through other means, such as disease or resource collapse. Eventually, something gives. Populations surge until they crash. Rot builds until nutrients lock up. Predators decline until prey overshoot. The forest floor becomes crowded but less alive, busy but less functional. From above, the canopy still looks green. From below, the engine is misfiring. Army ants do not maintain order through control. They maintain it through motion. They remind the understory that hiding forever is not an option. When that reminder disappears, the forest does not collapse dramatically, it clogs. This is the deeper truth behind their role. The Amazon is not held together by its giants alone. It depends on relentless, unglamorous forces that prevent accumulation, stagnation, and delay. Army ants are one of those forces, a moving constraint that keeps life cycling instead of hoarding itself into instability. When they are gone, the forest floor doesn't explode with chaos. It sinks into excess, and excess, in complex systems, is often more dangerous than scarcity. The Blackwater pool looks wrong before it looks empty. The surface is still, tea-dark and reflective, swallowing light rather than scattering it. Submerged roots tangle just below the meniscus, and fallen branches lie half-buried in silt, forming cavities that fish normally treat with caution, yet here they drift openly. Small caracons school tight to the bank, juvenile cichlids hover in the shallows longer than they should. Even armored catfish leave cover to graze algae in exposed lanes. The river has not become safer. It has become permissive, and in the Amazon, permission is always temporary. What is missing is not a predator in the classical sense. No jaws break the surface, no chase erupts. The loss is invisible, felt only in behavior. The electric eel is gone, and with it, the river's shock fence. Electric eels are not built like hunters that rely on speed or stealth alone. They are long, heavy-bodied fish, adapted for slow, deliberate movement in oxygen-poor, debris-filled water where visibility is nearly zero. Their true weapon is neither muscle nor teeth, but electricity. Bioelectric output, generated by modified muscle cells, packed along most of their body length. These cells fire in coordinated volleys, producing pulses that can exceed hundreds of volts. The number itself is misleading. What matters is not voltage as spectacle, but precision and context. In Blackwater, electricity travels where sight cannot. For hunting, electric eels use brief, targeted discharges to override prey nervous systems. A rapid pulse locks muscles into involuntary contraction, freezing fish mid-swim or forcing them into rigid exposure. The eel does not need to chase, it simply closes distance while the prey is neurologically trapped. In defensive situations, stronger bursts deter predators that might otherwise test a slow-moving fish in tight quarters. Few animals in the Amazon learn this lesson twice. The eel creates a zone of consequence, and that zone reshapes how space is used. When the eel disappears, those zones dissolve. Fish that once avoided certain routes, cavities, and narrow channels begin to crowd them. Shallow refuges become popular again, especially in dry seasons when oxygen drops and predators concentrate. These pools were never safe in the absence of jaws. They were regulated by electricity. Without it, fish stack into familiar shelters, increasing density far beyond what the habitat can support comfortably. Crowding changes everything. Competition intensifies. Feeding becomes aggressive. Smaller species that once spread across microhabitats are pushed into marginal zones or consumed outright. Baitfish populations drop quickly, not because a new predator has arrived, but because pressure that once enforced spacing is gone. The river's social geometry collapses. Larger predators feel the shift next. Piscivorous fish that relied on steady access to baitfish find those resources depleted or unpredictably clustered. Diets change. Hunting ranges expand. Some species push into shallower or more open water, increasing their own exposure to birds and mammals. Others move upstream or downstream, altering local balances. The removal of one electric predator propagates outward as dietary instability. This effect is amplified by the eel's role as a boundary maker. Electric fields are invisible, but they are sensed. Many fish possess electroreceptors sensitive enough to detect weak electrical disturbances in the water. They feel the eel before they see it, often before they consciously react. This creates soft borders, areas of avoidance that are never marked but always respected. These borders reduce conflict, prevent overcrowding, and distribute biomass across the river system. Without those borders, behavior homogenizes. Fish stop differentiating space finally. They pile into the same shelters, feed at the same times, and retreat along the same escape routes. Uniform behavior invites instability. When one area fails, through overuse, pollution, or human pressure, the entire local community suffers at once. Humans notice the change through fishing. Pools that once yielded little suddenly appear productive. Fish are easier to catch, slower to flee, more predictable in their movements. Local fishers adapt quickly, concentrating effort in these safe zones. Nets are set more often, lines are left longer. The feedback loop accelerates. Animal pressure and human pressure converge on the same spaces. What looks like abundance is actually compression, and compression is fragile. As fishing intensifies, certain species vanish first, those already stressed by crowding and competition. Others linger, smaller and leaner, their growth stunted by resource scarcity. The river does not empty evenly. It hollows. There is also a subtler human cost. Electric eels are often treated as hazards rather than assets, removed or killed to reduce risk. Yet their presence historically discouraged both animals and people from overusing specific pools. Electricity enforced restraint without fences, signs, or laws. When that deterrent is gone, management must replace it artificially, often too late and with far less nuance. The eel's biology explains why its absence matters so much. Unlike predators that rely on pursuit, electric eels operate effectively in confined, low-visibility environments where other hunters struggle. They specialize in edges, root tangles, flooded forests, narrow channels, places where prey would otherwise feel secure. By contesting these refuges, eels prevent the formation of absolute safe havens. This keeps prey moving, dispersing feeding pressure, and reducing localized depletion. Their electrical discharges also influence physiology indirectly. Prey exposed to sublethal pulses experience stress responses that alter behavior and metabolism. They learn avoidance patterns that persist even when immediate danger passes. Over time, this conditions populations to respect spatial limits. Remove the stimulus, and those learned boundaries erode within generations. The twist is that chaos increases when electricity disappears. Without the eel, the river becomes more violent, not less. Competition intensifies. Predation events become more frequent and less selective. Disease spreads more easily in crowded refuges. Overfishing accelerates in predictable locations. The system loses its invisible organizer. Electricity in this context is not a weapon of destruction. It is a language. It communicates presence, risk, and ownership of space in an environment where vision and sound are unreliable. The eel speaks fluently in that language, and the river listens. When the eel is gone, the river goes deaf. Fish behave as though every pool is equally safe, every shelter equally viable. They are wrong, and the cost of that mistake accumulates slowly, invisibly, until collapse feels sudden. The shock fence was never meant to protect prey from harm. It was meant to keep harm distributed, diluted, and survivable. The electric eel is not a monster of voltage. It is an architect of boundaries. Remove it, and the Amazon's black water does not calm. It loses structure, and without structure, even abundance becomes a liability. The crossing feels easier than it should. The water is wide but calm, its surface broken only by slow ripples and drifting leaves. Hoofprints line the bank, fresh and overlapping, pressed deep into the mud where animals have entered and exited again and again. There is no hesitation here, no pacing along the edge, no testing of depth or current. Kangaroos, feral pigs, cattle, even people treat the river like an inconvenience instead of a decision. Something has gone missing, and what remains is not safety, but permission. In northern Australia, that permission is usually enforced by a single presence, the saltwater crocodile. Crocodiles do not patrol rivers the way predators patrol territories. They anchor them. A large saltwater crocodile establishes dominance over specific stretches of water, bends, crossings, confluences, places where movement funnels and visibility drops. From those points, it creates fear zones that radiate outward. Animals learn, quickly and often fatally, that some banks are not equal to others. Drinking sites shift, crossing points spread out, time spent at the water's edge shrinks. The crocodile does not need to attack frequently. Like all effective ambush predators, it relies on anticipation more than action. When that anticipation disappears, behavior changes immediately. Animals begin to cross wherever it is convenient. Herds stop detouring to narrower, rockier sections. They wade in broad, shallow stretches, trampling the same banks repeatedly. What was once a mosaic of lightly used access points becomes a handful of heavily trafficked corridors. Soil compacts under hooves and feet. Vegetation along the edges is stripped and crushed before it can recover. Roots that once stabilized the bank are exposed, then torn free. The river responds the only way it can. Erosion accelerates. Without vegetation to hold the margins, rainfall and seasonal floods shear off layers of soil and carry them downstream. The water grows cloudier, not just after storms, but as a baseline condition. Fine sediment stays suspended longer, reducing light penetration. Aquatic plants that require clear, shallow water struggle to photosynthesize. Seagrass-like freshwater species thin out. Submerged root mats decay. What looks like a minor change in clarity is actually a shift in the river's energy budget. Fish feel it first at the juvenile stage. Many species depend on vegetated margins and clear shallows as nursery habitat. These areas provide both food and protection from larger predators. As plants disappear and water turns opaque, larvae lose orientation cues. Invertebrates that graze on plant surfaces decline. Juvenile fish are forced into open water earlier, where survival rates plummet. Recruitment drops quietly, season after season, until adult populations thin without any obvious single cause. Insects follow the plants. Aquatic insects that rely on submerged vegetation for egg-laying or larval attachment vanish or move upstream. Others that tolerate murkier conditions expand, often species with shorter life cycles and higher reproduction rates. The insect community shifts toward boom and bust dynamics. This ripples upward. Birds that specialize in gleaning insects from water plants abandon degraded stretches. Wading birds find fewer prey in the shallows. Some species concentrate in the remaining intact areas, intensifying pressure there and accelerating decline. All of this begins with crossings becoming easy. The saltwater crocodile prevents ease by making every approach to water a calculated risk. Its biology is perfectly suited for this role. Crocodiles thermoregulate by basking, anchoring themselves near water access points where prey must pass. Their eyes and nostrils sit high on the skull, allowing them to remain almost entirely submerged while monitoring the bank. Sensory pits along their jaws detect minute vibrations, registering footsteps and splashes long before visual confirmation. In murky water, this sensory system is more reliable than sight. This makes crocodiles especially effective at regulating behavior in low-visibility systems. Animals cannot rely on spotting danger. They must assume it. That assumption spreads them out. When crocodiles are removed or reduced, the river loses that assumption. Animals cluster where terrain is easiest. Humans do the same. People swim more often. Boats linger longer in shallow reaches. Fishing pressure concentrates at convenient bends and crossings. Without the crocodile enforcing spatial discipline, human behavior mirrors animal behavior. Shortcuts multiply, and risk tolerance rises. This creates a vacuum that does not remain empty for long. Accidents increase. Drownings rise as people underestimate currents and footing in eroded banks. Boats strike submerged debris loosened by collapsing margins. Other predators step into the gap indirectly. Sharks move farther upriver during certain conditions. Large bull sharks, adaptable and opportunistic, exploit muddier water and increased prey movement. They do not replace crocodiles functionally, but they add unpredictability. The river trades a known risk for diffuse danger. The irony is that crocodiles rarely overuse their territory. A dominant individual will defend a stretch fiercely, limiting the presence of other large crocs and keeping overall pressure on the bank relatively stable. Remove that individual, and multiple smaller crocodiles may move in, or none at all. Either outcome destabilizes the system. Fear becomes inconsistent, which is worse than fear being intense. From an ecological perspective, crocodiles are engineers of hesitation. They slow everything down. They shorten visits to water. They lengthen travel routes. They turn the river from a resource into a boundary that must be negotiated carefully. That negotiation protects the banks. Without it, the river becomes a thoroughfare. There is also a feedback loop that compounds the damage. As erosion worsens and fish nurseries decline, fishing success drops. Humans respond by moving more, covering more ground, using more access points, trampling more banks. What began as ease becomes desperation. The system spirals. This is why the disappearance of top ambush predators often produces landscapes that look busier but function worse. Activity increases, noise increases, movement increases, yet productivity declines. Stability erodes. The saltwater crocodile is not valuable because it kills animals. It is valuable because it forces restraint in a place where restraint does not come naturally. Rivers invite congregation. Life needs water, and water draws everything toward the same edges. Without a predator enforcing distance, those edges collapse under the weight of demand. The twist is uncomfortable but consistent across ecosystems. Apex predators often protect habitats not by preserving life directly, but by making life harder in very specific places. They distribute pressure by punishing convenience. They make shortcuts dangerous and lingering costly. In doing so, they preserve structure. When the crocodile disappears, the river does not relax. It frays. What felt like freedom was actually the removal of a constraint that kept everything else intact. The change begins in the open, where it is easiest to miss. A rabbit pauses longer at the edge of scrub. A young kangaroo feeds a little farther from cover, head down, ears half turned instead of fully locked upward. Small birds cross exposed ground in clean daylight arcs rather than low, frantic hops. Nothing dramatic announces the shift. The land simply feels less watched. The sky has gone quiet, and that quiet invites risk. In Australia's open country, the wedge-tailed eagle is not just a hunter, it is a ceiling. Its presence caps behavior from above, compressing how long animals linger, how far they stray, and which individuals get to survive their own mistakes. When that ceiling lifts, life expands upward into daylight, and that expansion carries a cost that arrives later, not immediately. Wedge-tailed eagles hunt with advantages that no ground predator can replicate. Vision comes first. From hundreds of meters up, an eagle reads movement the way humans read text. A flicker in grass, a limp in a gate, a pause too long in open sun. These are not details, they are signals. Surprise comes next. The strike is fast, not because the bird is reckless, but because delay gives prey time to convert panic into pattern. The eagle removes that option. It does not chase weakness, it edits it. This editing pressure shapes everything below. In landscapes where eagles patrol, prey species learn that exposure is temporary. Foraging windows narrow. Movement compresses into dawn and dusk. Sick and injured animals are selected out quickly, often before they can reproduce or pass on compromised traits. This does not make populations smaller in a simple way. It makes them sharper. Survival becomes conditional on alertness, coordination, and efficient use of cover. When the eagle disappears, those conditions loosen. Daytime movement expands first among the smallest and fastest breeders: rabbits, hares, rodents, and some ground-nesting birds. Their numbers rise quickly, not because the environment suddenly improved, but because a filter was removed. Individuals that would have been taken from above now persist long enough to breed. At first, this looks like success. More animals, more visible life, more activity across the plain. Then grazing pressure accumulates. As herbivore numbers climb, feeding spreads into marginal areas. Young shoots are eaten before they can establish. Grasses are cropped shorter and more frequently, reducing root depth and water retention. In arid and semi-arid systems, this matters immediately. Bare soil absorbs heat faster. Surface temperatures rise. Shade retreats as low vegetation thins. What once buffered heat now amplifies it. Heat stress does not kill evenly. Adults cope better than the young. Newborns and juveniles suffer first, but not right away. The population boom continues through 1 or 2 breeding cycles before the environment pushes back. Less cover means less shelter from sun and wind. Milk production drops in lactating females under thermal stress. Nest success declines in birds exposed to higher ground temperatures. Mortality spikes suddenly, creating the illusion of a mysterious crash. In reality, the crash was engineered months earlier when the sky stopped hunting. This delay is what makes aerial predators so easy to underestimate. Their absence does not produce immediate collapse. It produces overshoot. The eagle also shapes behavior through fear that is difficult to measure. Ground predators create lateral danger, approaches that can be anticipated and countered by group vigilance. Sky predators impose vertical risk that cannot be watched constantly. You cannot stare upward all day. The solution is avoidance. Limiting exposure time, choosing routes that offer overhead cover, breaking up open movement. Remove the eagle, and those constraints dissolve. Animals begin to treat openness as neutral instead of dangerous. That neutralization encourages grazing in exposed flats and ridgelines that were once used sparingly. These areas erode faster under hoof and paw. Runoff increases during rain events. Nutrient loss accelerates. Productivity drops long after animal numbers peaked. There is another role the eagle plays, quieter but just as important: scavenging. Wedge-tailed eagles are not obligate scavengers, but they are highly efficient at removing carcasses, especially in open country. Roadkill, livestock losses, and natural deaths are quickly detected from the air and consumed or reduced to bone before decay spreads. This rapid cleanup limits blowfly breeding, reduces disease reservoirs, and prevents carcasses from drawing in large numbers of mesopredators that might destabilize nearby nesting sites. Without large raptors, carcass dynamics change. Smaller scavengers move in: foxes, feral dogs, corvids, often lingering longer and ranging wider. Blowflies complete full life cycles unchecked, increasing parasite pressure on living animals. Disease transmission becomes more diffuse and harder to predict. The ecosystem trades fast, visible removal for slow, distributed contamination. Even fire behavior is influenced indirectly. Overgrazed landscapes accumulate dry litter unevenly, creating patchy fuel loads that burn hotter in some areas and not at all in others. Fire intensity becomes less predictable. Regeneration patterns skew toward hardy, fire-tolerant species, reducing structural diversity. The sky's absence echoes all the way down to the soil. What makes this dynamic particularly deceptive is that prey species appear to win at first. Numbers go up. Daytime visibility increases. Human observers see abundance and assume balance. But abundance without constraint is not strength. It is tension stored in the system. The eagle's hunting style explains why its loss produces delayed effects rather than immediate ones. It targets the exposed and the weak, not randomly and not constantly. Its pressure is selective and uneven, which prevents uniform responses. Remove that pressure, and responses synchronize. Everyone expands at once. Synchrony is dangerous in ecological systems because it concentrates demand. When the environment pushes back, as it always does, it does so indiscriminately. Heat, starvation, disease, and fire do not select gently. They crash populations hard and fast, often killing the very young the predator once spared indirectly by keeping numbers in check. The twist is that the sky predator was never the enemy of prey. It was their regulator, maintaining a margin between use and exhaustion. By enforcing caution, the eagle preserved the conditions that allowed prey to persist through harsh seasons. When the sky stops hunting, prey does not escape control. Control simply shifts from a precise biological filter to blunt environmental punishment. The land hits back, and it does not miss. In Australia's open spaces, the wedge-tailed eagle is not just a symbol of power. It is a stabilizer of daylight. Its shadow keeps life from spreading too thin, too fast, into conditions it cannot survive. Remove the shadow, and the sun becomes the predator. The change shows up first in the seals. Along the edges of rookeries and haul-out sites, individuals linger longer in open water instead of hugging the broken terrain near shore. Travel routes straighten, detours shrink. Groups fan out instead of compressing. The surface looks busy, sleek bodies porpoising, heads popping up in calm confidence, yet something essential has thinned out. The ocean has not become safer. It has become permissive, and permission in a living system always carries interest. The great white shark is not important because it eats seals. It is important because seals believe it might. This belief governs movement. In cold, productive Australian waters, great whites patrol migration corridors and hunting grounds where prey must cross between feeding areas and shelter. Their presence does not empty the sea, it rearranges it. Seals shorten time spent in exposed zones, favor complex bottom topography, and adjust dive profiles to reduce surface vulnerability. These choices ripple outward. Where seals feed determines where fish feel pressure. Where fish avoid feeding determines where algae, kelp, and invertebrates gain or lose ground. The shark's true power lies not in teeth, but in choreography. When the great white disappears, the choreography collapses. Seals are the first to relax their geometry. They range farther offshore during daylight, linger longer near the surface, and take more direct paths between colonies and feeding grounds. Energy expenditure drops, foraging efficiency rises. Populations may increase slightly or simply redistribute, but the more important change is spatial. Feeding pressure spreads into areas once avoided. This shift cascades quickly. Seals do not feed randomly. They target dense prey patches, schools of pelagic fish, squid concentrations, and seasonal aggregations driven by temperature and current. When seals expand their hunting footprint, those prey schools are displaced. Some move deeper, others scatter along the shelf. Still others compress tightly around structural refuges, like reefs and kelp forests, where maneuverability favors them over pursuit predators. Each response reshapes the seascape. Reefs that suddenly receive heavier fish traffic experience intensified grazing or predation, depending on which species arrive. Herbivorous fish may boom in one area while collapsing in another. Algal growth responds unevenly, thickening in places where grazers retreat and thinning where they concentrate. Coral and kelp recruitment swings with these changes, altering habitat complexity on timescales too slow to notice until the pattern is entrenched. This is the apex effect in its purest form. The shark does not need to reduce prey numbers to control outcomes. It only needs to make certain routes and behaviors expensive. By imposing risk on movement, it distributes feeding pressure across space and time. Remove that risk, and pressure concentrates. The ocean absorbs concentration poorly. In places where fish schools are pushed off traditional grounds by expanded seal activity, commercial and recreational fisheries follow. Catch rates spike briefly, then drop as fish either relocate again or are overharvested. Fishers interpret the initial spike as success and increase effort, locking in a cycle that empties the area faster than it can recover. Elsewhere, reefs overloaded with displaced fish experience sudden predation imbalances. Some invertebrate populations explode. Others vanish. The system fragments. Great whites also influence thermoregulation and migration in subtle ways. Seals and other prey time surface activity to minimize exposure during periods of peak shark presence, often aligning foraging with lower light or rougher seas. This synchronizes prey movement with environmental conditions that reduce metabolic stress and predation efficiency. When sharks are absent, that synchronization breaks. Animals forage whenever it is energetically cheapest, not when it is safest. The result is short-term gain and long-term vulnerability, particularly during heat waves or low productivity seasons. Humans read the absence of sharks badly. No sharks become shorthand for healthy ocean, a misunderstanding reinforced by calmer beaches and safer-looking waters. Ecotourism pivots. Dive sites shift. Cage diving disappears, replaced by broader, less regulated wildlife encounters. Fishing pressure increases near shore as people assume risk has dropped. The irony is that these changes intensify the very instability the sharks once dampened. Fisheries feel the effects unevenly. Species that benefited from shark-mediated spacing now face sudden overuse. Others that were suppressed by fear-driven avoidance gain temporary relief, only to crash when pressure returns through different pathways. Management struggles to keep up because the changes are behavioral before they are numerical. Stock assessments lag reality. There is also a scavenging dimension often overlooked. Great whites remove weak, injured, and dead animals efficiently, preventing carcasses from drifting into nearshore systems where they can alter nutrient balances or draw in mesopredators that disrupt nursery areas. Without them, carcass processing shifts toward slower, more diffuse pathways. Nutrient pulses become less predictable. Some areas receive sudden enrichment, others starve. What makes the loss of great whites particularly dangerous is the delay. The ocean does not collapse on cue. It accumulates debt. Behavior changes first, distribution follows, population shifts come later. By the time numbers decline visibly, fish stocks falling, reefs degrading, seal health fluctuating, the cause has receded into memory. The shark's absence is no longer part of the narrative. Blame migrates to climate, pollution, or chance, all of which may contribute, but none of which explain the pattern alone. The great white's biology explains why its role is so easily misread. It is a wide-ranging, low-density predator with slow reproduction and high energy demands. It cannot flood the system with kills. Its influence is therefore invisible unless you look at movement rather than mortality. It enforces caution at scale, turning vast stretches of ocean into conditional space, usable, but only briefly and with awareness. Remove that condition, and the ocean flattens behaviorally. Everything begins to use everything all the time. This flattening is what destabilizes reefs and pelagic systems alike. Diversity thrives on uneven pressure. Some places need to be dangerous, some of the time. Some routes need to be costly. Fear, in this context, is not pathology. It is structure. The twist is uncomfortable because it challenges intuition. We expect the removal of a top predator to produce immediate release and visible abundance. Instead, it produces a long, quiet drift toward imbalance. The waves that follow are not tsunamis, they are tides, rising and falling over years until the shoreline no longer matches memory. Great white sharks are not guardians of safety, they are signals. Their presence tells the ocean where not to linger, when not to feed, and how to move without breaking the system that feeds everyone. Remove the signal, and life does not stop. It spreads thin, presses too hard, and borrows from the future. By the time the debt comes due, the water looks calm, the seals look confident, and the absence of teeth feels like progress. But the ocean remembers what fear once organized, and it collects interest patiently.